From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch. Supervisor Perez.
Okay, thank you. And next, first of all, welcome to the 2 p.m. session of the Kern County Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, July 18th. And now I will turn to Mark Nations, our County Counsel, for a report on actions taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board did meet in closed session on item 26 from the morning agenda. It did not meet on 27. That turned out to be unnecessary, and it did meet on items 28 and 29, and there are no reportable actions taken with respect to those items. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nations. If you'd like to follow along with our agendas, they are located at the back tables by the exits. And we're going to consider the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So at this time, I will read the consent agenda items. Starting on page 2, item 4 is on consent. On page 3, items 5 through 9 are all on consent. However, I do have a correction that I want to read into the record for item 5. You go down to the all caps area, insert the word revised in the first line after recommended and findings. So it would read adopt resolution and recommend revised findings. And you're going to strike on the second line after the comma, accepting and reserving an easement for existing utilities. So that portion will be stricken, but it will remain on consent. On page 4, items 10 through 14 are all on consent. On page 5, all items 15 through 17 are on consent. On page 6, all items 18 through 20 are on consent. On page 7, all items 21 through 23 are on consent. On page 8, all items 24 through 29. And finally, on page 9, items 30 through 34 are all on consent. So are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment on our consent agenda? Okay, see none, I'll return to the board and ask if they'd like to remove any items, or I'd request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 3 ayes, 2 absent. Supervisor Couch, Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. And now we'll return to page 2 on the agenda. Item number 1 is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Do we have any members of the audience that would like to make a public statement on an item not on the agenda? Okay, see none, I'll move on then to board member announcements and reports. Anything since the morning? Okay. All right, then that takes us to our final item of business on the agenda, item 3. This is an item under Planning and Natural Resources Department. Request from Rhonda Hughes to vacate a portion of public access and utility easement located between South College Heights Boulevard and Silver Ridge Street, approximately 300 feet north of East Far Vista Avenue in Ridgecrest. And so I'll turn to our Director of Planning and Natural Resources, Lorelei Obiot. Good afternoon, Ms. Obiot.
Good afternoon, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. I'm here with my Division Chief, Craig Murphy. If we could have the overhead for a display. This case was originally scheduled for consideration by our board on June 27th. However, we did continue it to address a correspondence that we did receive in opposition. We have provided you with an addendum that clarifies issues regarding utilities. This is a parcel map that was created in 1963. At that time, the developer recorded a 30-foot wide utility easement, actually 60 feet total, 30 feet on both sides of these lots. But it was also written to include public utilities. That is not something that we routinely do over the last 30 years. We have changed that, but in 1963, the developer created this. The applicant, Rhonda Hughes, has come in with a request for all 4 of those lots to vacate the 30 feet on the south side. And staff is recommending, after consultation with Southern California Edison, to retain a 5-foot utility easement, which is normal and customary for these projects. That means that when someone builds on that property, they will then have the use of another 25 feet because you cannot build into this public access easement without this vacation. The opposition letters that have been received by a variety of people have called into question whether there is really, why are we vacating this 30 feet since we need 30 feet to access public utilities? Once again, that was a convention that was done by the developer in 1963. It is not a convention that we do on parcel maps now or tract maps. In this case, the homes to the north will retain a separate 30-foot wide easement. So they would retain their own easement. So in essence, we would have a 30-foot wide public access easement and an additional 5 feet. So we would have 35 feet. If those residents wish to vacate that easement, they could come in and go through the same process, and we would recommend retaining a 5-foot easement such that they could utilize their property as well. This easement does not provide access to anyone. Those lots have access off of East Far Vista Avenue and East Hartley Avenue. Therefore, we have contacted Southern California Edison. You've received an addendum and an email from Southern California Edison who indicates that their utilities are underground. They are supportive of a 5-foot public utility easement. Therefore, we provided you with a revised recommendation. Adopt resolution and recommended findings approving the non-summary vacation of the public access easement and approving the non-summary vacation of the public utility easement, accepting and reserving an easement for any existing utilities. That completes my presentation. I know the applicant is here, can answer any questions, as well as people who have put letters into the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from the board before I go to the public. Okay, seeing none, we'll open this up now. Ask anyone who would like to make comment on this item, please come forward.
Yep. Chief.
Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Tom Rafalski. I live directly behind the parcel in question. As far as I understand, I mean, I have a 30-foot utility easement, and they still do 30-foot utility easements everywhere in the county for 2.5 acres. Are you saying that if I did the parcel map that I live on, or across the street from where I live on, and less than 25 years ago, and all of them have 30-foot easements on both sides. Directly to the north, that there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 16 pieces. They both have 30-foot utility easements on each side of the property line. We have 18 people that wrote in saying that the in-place system works. We share easements. Why there is no justification for eliminating the 30-foot utility easement, because when they come in with big trucks. Just as recent as like 2 months ago, directly east of me, they had to replace a transformer. They come in with a truck. It's not 5 feet wide. It's 8 feet wide plus all the other equipment in order to change it. It's been that way forever. Their justification, if you read, their reason to do it is they want to develop the area. They're currently building 3 structures. All 3 of them are on a pad that's 150 feet away, over 100 feet from the 30-foot easement, and 150 feet away from the property line. There is no need, it doesn't hurt their development at all to maintain that 30-foot easement. When I went and talked to the individual, I said, what is this deal? Why do you need to vacate this utility easement? We all have 30-foot utility easements out here. They have to work on these things periodically. He said, I don't care about you, your neighbor, or the other lady who opposed it. I don't care. I want my property. He says, I bought 2.5 acres and I only get to use 1.9. I want my property back. He says, I didn't read my contract till after I bought it, and I didn't realize I had to give up these easements. Now I'm mad. I want my property back. We've been out, my neighbor, we've been out there for 30 years. Everybody has a 30-foot easement. We all, understand that's what it takes for the big trucks if they need to come in. For him to come in and want to be special without he has no pending permit with the county to build into that area. He just doesn't want it. Well, that's not the way the system works. If there was a need to promote the development, if they needed that property, then there's justification for coming in and asking to build in it. There is no justification, no valid justification at this time for doing away with it. The neighbor directly to the west of him, who is just as valid as he is in the scope of things, totally agrees that the 30-foot is reasonable, that it shouldn't be reduced. The transformer is sitting on the easement, but in order to access that, you can't just work within a 5-foot area. You need the space. None of the documents provided by the planning commission say anything about Southern California Edison. They talk about the gas company. As far as I can tell from the material presented, they didn't even contact Edison. So I called a gentleman that I know that worked for Edison for 30 years, who recently retired, who actually came out and put our line in, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't go talk to them. They'd never approve that because it's not reasonable. They need the space. It's used. Their justification isn't valid. In order for you to grant this, they need to have a valid justification, and not just, I want my property back. There is no valid justification, and you have the neighbor that agrees. I mean, why is this person more special than the other guy next to it that agrees that it's reasonable, to have this easement?
Thank you, sir. Who'll be next, please?
Yeah, I'm David George. I'm just to the north of, or next to Tom here. And I'll make this short. We've had 18 responses, comments on this request, and they're all not in favor of his request. And I'm just thinking, unless he's got a really good reason to want to do it, I'd like to maintain the status quo. I mean, we all share in the disutility of this, of an easement. And just because the transformer, and I paid like $3,000 to have this power, I was the first one out there. And because they put the transformer 5 feet onto my easement, does that necessarily mean that the other easement is not desirable anymore? I just don't understand the reasoning. If he's got a really good justification for doing it, I say let the existing easement plan prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? Okay, going once, twice, okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion. I'll return to the board. This is in Supervisor Gleason's district, so Supervisor Gleason, I will ask if you would like to start us off.
Sure, thank you. That's my mic on again. Ms. Oviatt, could you point on the map on where the transformer is? Or Craig, could you do that? I'm not sure I know where it is.
You can see it on there. We'll locate that on the aerial.
Okay, that's fine.
While we're locating that, I would note that the addendum that you received, and we did give to these gentlemen, has an email from the Southern California Edison Ridgecrest District Service Planner, who indicates that a 5-foot access is adequate to maintain their facilities. So I would also note, if we can put up the other, this is an unusual easement. We do not record 60-foot or 30-foot public utilities easements. We record 60 feet public access easements. As you can see, all of these subdivided lots have roads. Those are roads, and within those roads, there's 5 feet, usually next to the curb in people's front yards, for accessing utilities. That has been the convention. There are no, as you can see from this diagram, there are no other of these types of access. We have verified that this does not provide legal access. You cannot have a double frontage lot, therefore they cannot have frontage on both sides of this easement. Their frontage is East Hartley Avenue and East Far Vista Avenue. We did do a site inspection and discovered that some people have already built into their portion of the easement. That, of course, is not allowed. We are not going to take any action on that, but fundamentally, this is an unusual recordation from 1963. We do believe that the findings that need to be made can be made to vacate this. Therefore, these property owners on the south would be able to receive another 25 feet of use of their property. And if the property owners to the north wish to come in and do a vacation, I believe we could still make the same findings. So once again, we do have a letter from Southern California Edison, which has been provided to you in this addendum, which clearly states that a 5-foot easement, which is the standard, would be sufficient.
So it's the public easement that's being vacated, not the utility easement.
We are vacating 25 feet of the utility easement as it is not needed.
So
We're reserving 5 feet for
we
the
would
other easement.
retain 5 foot of utility easement for those properties lying on the south side of that easement line.
I would clarify that if there is any existing utilities, such as the transformer, if it happened to be on this side, so we will, before this can take action, your board's action is a recommendation. However, we have to accept and reserve an easement for any existing utilities, so we would work with Southern California Edison to make sure that any existing utilities, an easement was recorded for that. At this point, they're telling us that 5 feet is sufficient, but your board, this recommendation would assure that there would be no utilities that are not set aside in an easement.
And you heard from all utilities?
We did.
Okay, I got a question for, hold on, you can't speak just yet. But I do have a question for you, so I'm going to give you a chance. So if you'd come up, Mr. Rafalski, I'd appreciate that. I got a question for you. Appreciate you driving all the way down here. I know the pain, I do it regularly.
We love it.
In my mind, what I'm thinking here, I see no problem with granting this 25-foot easement for these folks, reserving 5 foot for utility, and I can't see the argument against it. I'm trying to understand your perspective, and I wish you would try to articulate, hold on, whoa, I'm done, and then you can speak. I would like to hear you articulate why you wouldn't then, and all 5 of these properties, or 4 of these properties, including Mr. George, apply for a vacation for 25 feet of their easement so they can expand their property. I don't understand why that would not be a good thing for you guys. Could you explain that to me, please?
Well, because all the other properties have 30-foot easements. I don't understand. I've been in the area for 30 years on this Hartley Street and did, like I said, 16 different parcel maps there. They all have 30 feet on both sides for a utility easement. I don't see where this 5 foot is. They're just not there. If you look at the parcel maps, it says 30-foot utility easement on all of them.
Right.
And those weren't done, those were not done 50 years ago.
So
I did one 30 years ago.
Right, I understand that, that's the way it is, but we're here discussing whether or not it's a good thing to change that. And I'm thinking it's a good thing to change it.
It might be a good thing to change that, but when all the data is sent out to us, not one statement says that Southern California Edison gave a comment back.
Okay.
It says Southern California Gas Company. So how am I supposed to know that it's okay with Edison, especially when I talk to the Edison guy and he says, that's ludicrous. We need, to work on a pad-mounted transformer, and I have the data to back it up, it requires 8 feet of reach because they work with a 10-foot pole, basically, on the transformer. So 5 foot is not, you need the space. So in that respect, the 30 feet is reasonable. They did not, like I said, Edison's comment is nowhere to be found in this data package.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Oviatt, could you care to comment on that?
These issues were brought up at the Planning Commission. Subsequent to your board's agenda, we reached out again to Southern California Edison, and we've provided your board today. We appreciate that it wasn't in the original package. That's why we have public hearings.
So I can't see, just because it's the way it is doesn't mean that's the way it stays. I mean, I think it's a good thing for these people to gain 25 extra feet of property. I would like to see you apply for 25 extra feet of property, keep your 5 foot of utility, so you have 5 foot of utility on your property and 5 foot utility on the properties to the south. And I don't see any problem at all with the staff's recommendation with this. Could you read your recommendation one more time?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair. The recommendation is adopt resolution and recommended findings approving the non-summary vacation of the public access easement and approving the non-summary vacation of the public utility easement, accepting and reserving an easement for any existing utilities.
Thank you. Mr. Rafalski, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, and Mr. George, thank you for coming down, but I'm going to make a motion on staff's recommendation.
Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Oviatt, I'm struggling to see any detriment to the gentlemen who have testified today if we grant this for someone else. It benefits someone. I don't see that it harms anyone else. What am I missing? Do you see any detriment to other parties?
Supervisor Maggard, we have not, given that there will still remain a 30-foot easement on their property. If what they are concerned about is the access, then they will retain their 30 feet. This is 60-foot wide public utility easement. Does not provide public access because technically that access is provided by the other 2 roads. So we do not see and in reality, if they did come in to vacate their 25 feet, then we would have at least a 10-foot.
Which is
More than sufficient, since normally it's a 5-foot access easement. Utilities will access their utilities. Accessing a Southern California Edison transformer or something like that, the easement is about the legal place that you have to put those. It's not always about the access.
Is there a cost to be incurred by those on the other side of the easement if they wish to vacate theirs?
Yes, they would come in and pay the fees, and we would go through the same process at your board.
There you go.
Is it conceivable that we could vacate theirs today?
We have not provided the appropriate public notice. There are postings and public notices that have to occur.
Okay, thank you.
I take back in.
Supervisor Gleason.
How much is the cost for them to come back in and vacate 25 feet, the people to the north?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, I don't have the exact amount. I believe it's, perhaps Ms. Hughes, I believe it's 1,200? It's $1,070. Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Per parcel of the
$1,070.
whole thing,
No,
for
for
the
the
for
whole
the
thing.
appeal, for the whole thing?
The whole thing.
And there are 4 properties south of that easement? It's $250. You want to come back? It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gleason, if you're interested in additional testimony, I don't know.
2 minutes.
Okay.
You have the authority to waive our fee according to the rules. So the fact is that there's all these 30-foot utility easements. The whole area is 30-foot utility easements and has been for a long time. If it just takes money, it just doesn't seem kind of right that if you throw enough money, you can have it back. They were put there for a reason on the parcel map. Now, all of a sudden, you don't have to have them. Nothing's changed as far as the way they construct the power lines. Now, if you want to waive our fee, I guess, but it seems unreasonable for.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rotowski.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, there is no waiver of fees in the Planning and Natural Resources Ordinance that your board has adopted. Yes, there is. There is no waiver.
Thank you.
of fees.
I was
Thank
not interested in granting a waiver of fees for this purpose. I wasn't about to do it. But the applicants to the north, to the south, did pay the $1,070.
That's correct.
Thank you. My motion stands.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes, sir, you have a second.
Okay, please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 3 ayes, 2 absent. Supervisor Couch, Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Ms. Oviatt. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda today, and so I will entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, August 8th at 9 a.m.
So moved.
We're adjourned.